It plays well. Sorry, I just had to start with that. It was on the nose. We're talking about LEGO. LEGO Batman, that is, in case autoplay brought you here. The LEGO Batman franchise makes up a considerable amount of the company's sales every year and has seen incredible success digitally with both dedicated video games and movies. It grossed billions of dollars, it spawned hundreds of sets, it became millions of childhoods. Well, it became a big part of my childhood at least. I had a Batmobile at one point, I had a Batman poster, which is still in my bedroom, albeit not LEGO Batman. I even asked Santa for a Batman suit at some point, but my letter must have gotten lost on the way. Either way, LEGO Batman was at the very least a major contributor for my love of the Caped Crusader. Specifically, LEGO Batman 2 on the Xbox 360, a game I must have played for hundreds of hours. I can't remember if I started liking Batman before or after I first played it, but regardless, it all links back to LEGO Batman. Even after having read a few Batman comics, watched Christopher Nolan's Batman movies, and played the famous Batman Arkham games, LEGO Batman 2 still holds a special place in my heart. But not the first one. That one I wouldn't play until like 2020. And it sure was different. LEGO Batman the video game, or LEGO Batman 1, came out in 2008 at the very start of the big LEGO game boom. It was riding off previous successes from its developers, Traveler's Tales, like Mickey Mania, Muppet Race Mania, and Toy Story Racer. Okay, well, maybe not those ones, but perhaps LEGO Indiana Jones and, of course, LEGO Star Wars. Traveler's Tales worked on and released the original LEGO Star Wars in collaboration with Lucasfilm back in 2005, and it instantly became a hit. A year later, the company transformed into what we now know as TT Games, and by 2007 they become the sole developer of all LEGO branded video games, and they ran with it. That same year, LEGO Star Wars the video game and LEGO Star Wars 2 experienced osmosis and became the complete saga, widely regarded as the definitive LEGO game. In 2008, we got LEGO Indiana Jones, 2010 LEGO Harry Potter, 2011 Pirates of the Caribbean, 2012 Lord of the Rings, 2013 Marvel Superheroes. It was just banger after banger after banger, year after year after year. Not a single IP felt out of reach. But I'm getting too ahead of myself. TT Games for over a decade would go on to create a repertoire that would shape millions of childhoods. And to link back to the topic of this video, it all snowballed from a handful of games. One of them being LEGO Batman the video game. Video game being one word, that's how you know they meant business. It's hard to find any official figures, but from what I came across, LEGO Batman 1 has sold amongst the best in the entire TT Games collection. From the get-go, it boasted a very positive reception, with people liking the silly and unique take on the Dark Knight. At the time, it was probably also the best way to experience Batman in a video game format. The critically acclaimed Arkham Asylum would only come out a year later. Over the decades, LEGO Batman 1 would go on to sell over 12 million copies across several platforms from the PlayStation 2 and Xbox 360 to the Wii PSP and even the Nintendo DS. It has since remained the best LEGO Batman game, third best-selling LEGO game, and one of the most beloved TT Games creations of all time. So the obvious question would be, why? And more importantly, if you'd never played it before, would you agree now? That is the reason I decided to make this video. to take a look at this cult classic that hardly anybody seems to talk about and discuss if it really does hold up even after almost 20 years, justifying its generational success. Well, that, and I thought it performed pretty well with the new one coming out. I don't know. Algorithm? Please? Either way, do please make note of that subscribe button as I kick us off in this retrospective, starting with, of course, They say a picture paints 1,000 words, and in that case, LEGO Batman paints 1,000,000. Throughout the game's runtime of about 6 or 7 hours, not a single word is spoken. The story is by definition shown, not told. And originally, all TT Games titles were like this. LEGO Star Wars and LEGO Indiana Jones most notably didn't feature any dialogue, the characters only making noises wherever you'd expect the voice lines to be. This meant that writers relied entirely on visual comedy and body language, pantomime, to convey the story. The style would coincidentally be discontinued with LEGO Batman 2 in 2012, which for the first time employed professional voice actors to impersonate the iconic characters. Games to follow, like LEGO The Lord of the Rings and LEGO Marvel Superheroes, would all feature proper voice lines, sometimes ripped directly from the movies, TT Games ultimately departing from the initial silent formula entirely. However, there are a number of reasons why I think this non-verbal approach to storytelling actually worked very well for early LEGO games. For one, they were easy to interpret. If characters don't speak, they don't need to be tied to a language, which means anyone in the world can understand them just as well. Since the writers had to put more effort into communicating things non-verbally, it allowed a broader, younger audience, who perhaps didn't speak English, to understand the story. Suddenly, players, especially children, would be able to imagine Batman's voice, no matter their background. My second reason is exactly that, imagination. If you think about the core idea of LEGO, it is for children to build their own worlds, to play out their own stories. As an extension of this, a child would have to imagine what their characters would say. The figurines don't just magically talk. This encourages creativity, it promotes critical thinking, and enables learning. And in my opinion, earlier LEGO games played into that very well. Yes, they told a predetermined story, but they still gave players, particularly children, a whole other level of freedom. A freedom to imagine. My last major point for this non-verbal style is simplicity. When the characters don't talk, it allows you to focus on the action and the gameplay. There are no funny quips when you beat up a goon. There is no annoying hand-holding when you're doing a puzzle.
This plant's stopping us from getting out here.
In a sense, it allows you to play the character beyond just moving it around the screen. Batman isn't really doing anything you're not controlling, so the narrative is essentially told solely through your actions. At the end of the day, the silent style, the mumble style as it's officially called, made the original LEGO games unique, and it certainly resonated with many who grew up with it. Sure, I may be biased because I'm one of them, LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga was my bread and butter, but you don't have to take my word for it. People's demand for it was so high that when TT Games released LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga in 2022, they included a whole mumble mode, which replaced all of the voice acting with the traditional character noises. It didn't make the game good, but at least it proves a point. That being said, what even is this silent story that the video game is trying to tell so non-verbally? Well, I'm very glad you asked, because I was just about to get into that. The plot of LEGO Batman 1 is split into 3 separate narratives, each made up of 2 episodes of 5 missions each. It kicks off with Gotham's most notorious, like the Joker, Penguin, and Two-Face, escaping from Arkham Asylum and splitting up into 3 separate groups, i.e. the 3 individual narratives. You can think of the episodes as sides A and B of a cassette, unless you were born after the 2000s, in which case you can think of them as, I don't know, the 2 sides of a pacifier? Side A is simple. It follows the actions of Batman and Robin as they chase down their respective group of villains, trying to throw them back into Arkham Asylum. Side B does the complete opposite. It puts you into the shoes of the villains, carrying out their plan congruent with the events of Side A and acting almost as prequels to each level. While the story is the same across the 2 sides, you get to see both perspectives and play out the levels in different ways, which does a lot for the complexity of the narrative. If you've ever played Resident Evil 2, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. In that game, you could play as either Leon or Claire independently, and the plot would change accordingly, presenting pretty much the same narrative but from a different perspective. It's a pretty smart tactic. On the one hand, it increases the game's total runtime by essentially doubling the plot, and on the other, it decreases the resources needed since development could just repurpose what they've already made to create a whole new playthrough. Applying this to LEGO Batman, you're technically not playing 3 storylines, but 6. The first episode, titled The Riddler's Revenge, follows the dynamic duo as they try to stop, the Riddler from enacting his revenge. After escaping from Arkham Asylum, the Riddler grouped up with Two-Face, Clayface, Poison Ivy Face, and Mr. Freeze to carry out a heist on Gotham City Bank. To do this, each villain is entrusted with a certain component required for the caper, which also ends up to be the assignment that gets them caught. Clayface is captured while helping the Riddler steal a key for the Gotham City Bank, Mr. Freeze is caught sourcing a freeze ray from an ice cream factory, and Poison Ivy is apprehended at their hideout at Gotham City Botanical Gardens. At the end of each of these encounters, the Riddler was always able to get away, thanks to Two-Face, who's driving a van which, ironically, belongs to the very place they're planning to rob. This van is actually the reason Batman and Robin were able to keep up with the villains for so long in the first place, since at the end of the first mission, You Can Bank on Batman, they managed to stick a tracker onto the vehicle as it drove away, taking them directly to their next location. In the third mission, Two-Face Chase, however, the van ultimately gets destroyed, and the Riddler and Two-Face are forced to flee on foot. Despite this, in the very next level, the one where Poison Ivy gets caught, the Riddler is once again able to get away thanks to none other than Two-Face, who is once again driving that same van. I guess Harvey just had to pay the impound fees and get it back up and running. It makes sense if you don't think too hard about it. The episode concludes with a battle against the Riddler and Two-Face, who had successfully broken into Gotham City Bank and set up a line of defense. If you're keeping up with the story so far, you might be wondering, what else? When Two-Face fixed the van after the chase, didn't he find the tracker and remove it? And you would be very smart, he probably did. However, Batman and Robin didn't need a tracker to figure out what was going on at that point. The Riddler already told them. At the end of each encounter, as the Riddler got away, he left behind a mysterious box. Inside this box were random Lego bricks, which at first didn't make any sense. They were just a heap of garbage. But by the 4th box, retrieved in a poisonous appointment, the puzzle finally came together and made a replica of, you're never gonna guess it, Gotham City Bank. Alright, it sounds stupid, I know. Why would the Riddler give Batman the exact clues to find them in the middle of their heist? This is clearly writing for toddlers, and that may be right, but what if the Riddler's ultimate plan wasn't to just rob Gotham City Bank? After all, the chapter is called the Riddler's revenge. You see, when Batman and Robin eventually get to the high-security vault, Two-Face and the Riddler are already prepared with a massive Gatling gun. Cages containing tons of gold bars sit unopened. Pallets of valuables are untouched. The two have made no effort to even start a robbery. They were waiting for the duo. It didn't matter to the Riddler if his gang was caught. It didn't matter if Batman was constantly on his tail. That's exactly where he wanted him to be. The entire time, this whole caper was only meant to be a ruse, a trap. Batman is most likely the one who got the Riddler locked up in Arkham Asylum in the first place, and for that, he wanted to get his revenge. This theory is probably a lot darker than what the writers actually intended. The idea that the Riddler would try to murder Batman through an intricate web of deceit and premeditation is definitely not too far for a DC plot, but maybe a little disturbing for a LEGO game aimed at 7-year-olds. The more accurate representation is probably that the Riddler is a goofy goober and wanted to play with Batman and Robin while doing what villains do, which is rob banks. This narrative would also probably sell more LEGO sets. I don't remember seeing the one where Batman and Robin get brutally gunned down. Regardless, as you would likely expect, the villains are ultimately defeated and sent back to Arkham Asylum, wrapping up the plot of the Riddler's revenge, and what I believe to be a very strong first episode. Probably also helped by its heavy inspiration from the beloved 1995 Batman Forever, all the way down to the core idea of a heist staged by the Riddler and Two-Face. That being said, we're obviously not done with this narrative. We still have Side B, which does give you some more context for the encounters. For instance, in the second level of Side A, an icy reception, you fight a bunch of Mr. Freeze's goons who have overtaken the factory. In its Side B counterpart, on the rocks, it's revealed how Mr. Freeze released his henchmen, who were stuck in cryostasis in Side A's boss arena. Likewise, in an enterprising theft, you get to see how Two-Face and the Riddler sourced the Gatling gun, and how they broke into the Gotham City vault in breaking blocks. Either way, even with its quirks and omissions, Side B levels do offer some valuable context to how everything in Side A happened. In theory, you could go through the episode without playing the villain levels at all, and the story would still make sense, but you'd be missing out a lot of content. The cast featured in Power Crazed Penguin are the Penguin, Catwoman, Bane, Killer Croc, and Man-Bat, of all villains. Inside his submarine, Cobblepot shares his plans to form an army of robotic penguins to siege Gotham City. He sets out the materials to fulfill it, which, as opposed to Riddler's laundry list, only entails a diamond. Piece of cake. Catwoman is the one who initially steals a diamond, but she's captured almost straight away by Batman and Robin, a scene that I believe to be the only thing from this game to have made it to Instagram Reels, even though there's another one later on that would fit the platform much better. The two are unable to retrieve the diamond, however, as Catwoman passes it just in time to another one of Penguin's accomplices, a stray cat. Following a boat chase and the destruction of one of Penguin's motorized submarines at Gotham City docks, Batman and Robin track down and capture Killer Croc in the sewers. As he's getting the shit beat out of him, a pamphlet flies out of his pocket advertising the Gotham City Zoo. At this point, the timeline of Power Crazed Penguin becomes quite confusing, and that's because unlike the Riddler's revenge, to get a good understanding of this episode, you'll definitely need Side B. You'll understand what I mean in a moment. At the Gotham City Zoo, Batman and Robin take down Man-Bat, who is part of the plan for whatever reason, but more importantly, they arrive at Penguin's lair, which is coincidentally also the name of the level. Over here, they fight a few of those robotic penguins and ultimately the penguin himself. And Catwoman, who was captured in the first level. At no point during Side A of the episode do we see Catwoman escaping incarceration, but that's because we only see it in Side B. Someone we also don't see at all in Side A, despite appearing in the cutscene, is Bane, who again only appears in Side B. Already, you can probably agree that Power Crazed Penguin is proving to be a lot more intricate of a plot than the Riddler's revenge. Sadly, Bane doesn't actually play a huge part in the story. He's captured in the very first mission of Side B, helping the Penguin acquire the antenna for his plan, meaning he doesn't even get the chance to fight Batman, something I would have really liked to see as a big fan of The Dark Knight Rises. Nevertheless, the next few missions are where the sauce is at. At the end of Harboring a Grudge, we get to see an imprisoned Catwoman being paid a visit by a stray cat carrying a familiar diamond. Penguin and Killer Croc are informed of this following the events of Batboat Chase and decide to selflessly break her out of captivity in the mission A Daring Rescue. At the end of it, Killer Croc stays behind to hold back the police, setting up the encounter with Batman and Robin in Side A. With that, I believe the timeline now makes a whole lot more sense. I still don't have an answer for why Man-Bat is here, but at least we got an answer for what happened to Bane and how Catwoman is free again in Penguin's lair. The two set up the transmitting apparatus in the Arctic area of the zoo, and all the robot penguins previously dispersed around Gotham finally wake up. The Penguins' plan has come to fruition. But only for a moment. Batman and Robin crash the party right as the machine comes to life. And following an embarrassingly difficult battle, I still don't know how I did it, they manage to blow up the antenna, severing Penguin's connection to his robots. One by one, the previously active penguins start to explode all over the city. But it's all good because him and Catwoman are finally apprehended, drawing a close to this episode. Except for the cat. That one is still at large to this day, so I guess we're never safe. Power Crazed Penguin is, in my opinion, a lot stronger of a narrative than the Riddler's revenge. While you could theoretically put the Riddler's motive together with Band-Aid to make it a little more complex than just robbing a bank, Penguin's is crystal clear all the way through. There's no strange clues, no useless objectives, and the story inside A and B intertwines beautifully. It really is a flawless performance. Aside for Bane, I'm still salty about that one. Why does Man-Bat get a boss fight but not Bane? Until now, you've probably been ticking off every villain on your bingo card as they've shown up. You've got Penguin, you've got Bane, you've of course got Two-Face, but there's one big name still missing, the Free Space. Don't worry though, that's all about to change in Joker's Return. Batman and Robin respond to a satellite sighting of Joker's gang at Ace Chemicals. Presumably, the game doesn't outright call it that, but it's a chemical processing plant in Gotham City and the mission is called Joker's Home Turf. It doesn't take a genius. Joker's intentions are to terrorize Gotham by carrying out attacks all over the city, and to do this he must first break into Ace to collect the compound for his lethal laughing gas. Helping him are of course Harley Quinn and Scarecrow, but also Killer Moth and Mad Hatter. I don't even know what discount bin they've fished these villains out of. This episode is another case of Side A and B being deeply interconnected, so to really break down the narrative, I'll be referring to events from both at the same time. While Batman and Robin are fighting Mad Hatter at Ace Chemicals, Harley Quinn and Joker set up a trap and capture Commissioner Gordon. The two relay a harrowing message to the dynamic duo, revealing their not-so-friendly intentions with the Commissioner, and link Batman their location. At Amusement Mile, the duo fight Harley Quinn and are able to free Commissioner Gordon, but fail at capturing the Joker, who gets away in his helicopter. Batman and Robin end up pursuing him and Scarecrow over the city in the mission Flight of the Bat, ultimately shooting them down, where they manage to escape on foot. Not long after, they're intercepted by the Gotham City Police Department, who are able to capture Scarecrow, forcing the Joker to scurry away into the city. In a video from Commissioner Gordon, Batman and Robin find out that him and Killer Moth have regrouped and attacked Harley Quinn's prisoner transport, setting her free. Killer Moth ends up getting the standard filler character treatment, stupidly distracted by a spotlight from a police helicopter, and is immediately caught by Batman and Robin in the level called In the Dark Knight. Wait. Gotham Cathedral is boasted to be the tallest building in Gotham City, making it a perfect choice for Joker's plan. With the help of Harley Quinn, he's set up a device to commence his attack on the city, releasing the laughing gas and condemning the citizens of Gotham. The clock at the top of the cathedral's tower is more than just a metaphor for time running out. Editor's note, there isn't actually a clock at the top of the tower in any iteration of the cathedral, but come on, that's a fucking banger line. I had to leave it in. During their fight with Killer Moth, Batman suddenly gets an intuition about Gotham Cathedral just across the street. Him and Robin leave the B-lister behind and head for the building, where, sure enough, they spot the Joker heading up the tower. At the top, a final battle ensues. As the two villains gain vantage, a helicopter piloted by one of Joker's goons flies in and starts raining bullets on Batman and Robin, who have to use two standard-issue Cathedral water guns to try to take it down. At some point in the altercation, the machine malfunctions, and a bolt of electricity strikes the duo. The shock forcibly throws them across the room, and the two fall unconscious. The Joker has won. There are a number of reasons for why Bruce Wayne decided to fight for justice in the appearance of a bat. Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy makes use of an experience early in Bruce's childhood which made him terrified of the creatures, later employing them as a final step in overcoming his own fears in order to become the fear of his enemies. However, in the earlier comics, the reasoning was simpler. Bruce was still motivated by the death of his parents, but the symbol of a bat was chosen almost through coincidence. One night, as he wondered how he would represent justice, a bat would fly into his room and Wayne would interpret it as an omen. It convinced him that that's what would inspire fear into the criminals of Gotham, and ultimately birthed him as the Batman. Regardless of which version you prefer, one thing remains consistent. There would be no Batman if there were no bats. And that rings as true for LEGO Batman. As the two heroes come to, Joker and Harley Quinn are looming over, gloating in their apparent victory. Batman's defeat represents the defeat of the city, the defeat of its people, and the guaranteed success of Joker's plan. At least, so it would seem until the bats. There are many things you can call LEGO Batman's story. Simplistic, sure. Ridiculous, perhaps. But not bad. Yeah, it is childish, and it's certainly not gritty, but it is a pretty faithful representation of a comedic Batman, as you would have seen in the original comics and movies. It conveys his stoic character, his strong charisma, and iconic capabilities without a word being spoken. It portrays a frightful Gotham and a cast of dangerous villains in a way that's friendly to a younger audience, and more importantly, retaining the depth of a detective franchise. Joker's return is the culmination of all of this, finally bringing us the notorious clash between Batman and Joker. The threat on Gotham, the capture of Commissioner Gordon, the showdown atop the cathedral, it all feels substantial and genuinely delivers on the impression that Batman is frantically trying to keep up with the chaos. The side B also helps solidify this narrative, seamlessly adding to plot points like Gordon's rescue and Harley's escape. Regardless, I have to give it to Joker's return for how well it adapts the character of Joker. In fact, all 3 episodes offer, in my opinion, great representations of all of the villains featured. The cat and mouse dynamic in The Riddler's Revenge perfectly reflects Riddler and Two-Face's narcissism and arrogance. Power-crazed Penguin matches flawlessly the mercenary attitudes of Penguin, Catwoman, and Bane, and Joker's return depicts a Joker driven by his crave for chaos and fear, as well as a Harley and Scarecrow who will stop at nothing to fulfill his plan. Personally, I would say the story of LEGO Batman 1 kept me pretty intrigued throughout. And keep in mind, this is me playing it in 2026, with the many other Batman video games to choose from, all with their own narratives. I want to say this proves the game still holds up, however, you can't really determine that from just the plot. You of course also need to have a good look at the... Every classic LEGO game follows the same formula. 2 characters are dropped into a level resembling a scenario from the franchise's IP and need to cooperate in order to reach an objective. The reason for this format is because back in the 2000s, people still had friends, and TT Games wanted to give them a platform to enjoy together. In LEGO Batman, this formula is easily applied. After all, the dynamic duo, Batman and Robin, have been a main staple of DC for decades. Therefore, every Side A mission features the 2 of them exclusively. This choice is in fact different from the games Traveler's Tales have released before and would release after. In LEGO Star Wars, for instance, levels would feature different characters depending on the scenario from the movie. In one mission, you'd be playing as Obi-Wan and Anakin, and in the next, Obi-Wan and Commander Cody. The one after, Yoda and Chewbacca. From this standpoint, LEGO Batman can seem like a downgrade in variety, but you have to remember that hero missions are only half of the game. For the villain missions, the characters change constantly in correlation with the story. The first villain level, The Riddler Makes a Withdrawal, features the Riddler and Clayface, while the second mission, On the Rocks, switches to the Riddler and Mr. Freeze. Not to mention, Episode 2 centers around a completely different cast, so the variety is there, just in a different form. On a broader scale, this sort of character variety is also very unique to LEGO games. If you think of any modern story game, the protagonist is oftentimes the only playable character, with maybe 1 or 2 other characters for short segments. Even in games where you get to customize your own character, like Elden Ring or Skyrim, the variety only comes out of replayability. You rarely get to change it over the course of the playthrough. The caveat to this is that in those games, as you progress, your character changes mechanically, either leveling up or unlocking new items. In LEGO Batman, or any other classic LEGO game, that's not really the case. You never upgrade a character. But we'll get to that later.